Smart 24, driving business.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying tuned on The Point. My name is Anthony, and on The Point, we analyze economic policy. This is Smart 24 TV. Now, Uganda this year, the new financial year 2023-2024, has a budget of close to at least about 52.7 trillion to be funded through revenue of about 29.9 trillion from the taxpayers' money, and also a couple of other funds from donors, grants, and other, of course, people like the banks and government borrowing. Now, with World Bank saying that it will not be issuing new loans, things could be changing, especially as far as how we are going to be able to facilitate this budget and the next financial year's budget. What could be some of the options that we could be exploring at this point in time? Honorable Dennis, talking about how government, for example, has been budgeting and spending, we've seen a lot of inconsistencies in government's expenditure and what we claim we have. We claim not to be having a lot of money, but then we see lots of convoys on the road. We still see lots of new ministers, new appointments by the president. Things seem normal for people in government, and this is what is hurting Ugandans. But now we are seeing people like World Bank saying they are pulling out, and we have now to look into our own pockets. We have to look into our own resource envelope as Uganda. What do you think the government should be doing right now to ensure that we spend wisely, at least with the little we have?
Yeah, thank you. I love it when you say we have a budget of 52 trillion. That's a fact. But the other fact is also that after you have allocated the 52 trillion in terms of debt repayment, debt rollover, you realize that the budget for this country, the discretionary funds available, is around 25 trillion. And that's a reality, because when I leave home with my wife, I give her 20,000, and I tell her, for the 15,000 and pay the charcoal woman. I cannot come to town and say I left 20,000 for my woman as her budget today. I should be realistic and say it's 5,000, because the 15 is to pay a debt. So when we have removed everything, we have 25 trillion shillings with a wage budget of around 7.3. So when you remove 25 trillion, if you subtract 7, you get something like 15?
About 18 trillion.
Because wage is statutory, it must be there. You have nothing to it. So you have very little leg space.
Yeah.
You don't have room for luxury. This is exactly what I'm saying. And just as you have said, the government has to rethink. I don't know how they seem to have been given a responsibility. They should be honest and genuine, the executive, and cut this budget into reality. There's a time when we joined Parliament and were supported with a grant of 200 million to buy cars as members of Parliament. And the public was in arms with members of Parliament. Said, how can you give members of Parliament a lot of money? But my brother, 200 million to facilitate a member of parliament to buy a car and maintain it for 5 years. It is what one can call patriotism. Otherwise, if that option didn't work and government procured vehicles for members of parliament and maintained them, at the end of 5 years, a government will not spend less than 600 million
on each MP,
on each member of parliament. So, when you look at how the economy is doing, and you look at brand new V8s for government in this country, just take stock, go to Ministry of Works and see what government has bought as V8s 2021 model. At almost 600 million each. You will doubt that there is a problem in this. You will not even believe that there is a problem. It is all rosy. Yet, we are in a crisis. So, government must rethink. When you go to some of these ministries, even officers from university recruited 1 year ago, they are cruising vehicles of very high value, 400 million, maintained by the government. When you go to the usage of these vehicles, I want to tell you, my brother, that when you go to Rukujiri on an introduction and you find government cars parked there, it is you paying for those government cars.
With the fuel.
With the fuel,
Yes.
maintenance, you're going to buy
And the driver
tires.
as well, yes.
It is you. It is my peasant from Busia who is paying a tax. And the government is going to buy a tire for somebody to go to Koboko to enjoy a wedding of a cousin. So until government becomes frugal and they realize that we are bleeding this country, the taxpayers, the wananchi need the service, they can rethink. Rwanda has done it. They have abolished buying cars for civil servants. You contribute, they give you a grant, and that is all. You use your own car, the maintenance is your own. People will not even misuse these government vehicles. When you take stock and see how much we spend in transport in this country, is not less than 8 trillion in a year. On fuel, car maintenance, and car costs. This is a nugatory expenditure. It can be avoided. Because when you buy these vehicles, what they do in these ministries, they buy 5 vehicles for ministers. What the ministers have been using goes to the director. What the directors have been using goes to the commissioners. What the commissioners have been using now goes to the assistant commissioners. And you find that even some ministries, even drivers have vehicles. And these vehicles are being managed and maintained by the taxpayer. All this little money which we are talking about, how do you utilize the little money we have? So that is one thing we must rethink. So it's not even 52 trillion to be realistic. It is 25 trillion, and when you remove taxes, I mean wages, you realize that you don't have even 20 trillion to play around and to build in this country. So we need to be very frugal. The government, for example, after elections, made a declaration that no new administrative units will be created. And there has been a call for new parishes, new villages, new sub-counties. So when their pronouncement came, the country has not collapsed. It should not be a temporary measure. It should be permanent. They should be even thinking of reducing. I'm a member of parliament, but I have no problem to engage in a discussion to reduce the size of parliament. Because we must face and swallow the bitter pill to say where do you want this country to go? When even when the World Bank gives us this money, 200 million to construct a health center too, with the level of corruption in this country, already 100 million is eaten. Even before people awarded the contracts, people pay money. All this money is part of the money which they are going to get and swindle. So when you say that you have built schools, the period when the government is building schools, there is more corruption than when the government is not building schools. Because there's no money to swindle. There's no money to steal.
Right. That's right.
So we must rethink, what do we need to do as a country? It is true we are going to have challenges. with the World Bank pronouncement. Already the shilling is suffering. The day before the pronouncement of the World Bank, the shilling was trading at 3,600 and something. The day after the pronouncement, it went to 3,780. And we are going to have more.
Right now, the shilling is at 3,750.
You see?
Record low. When you look at the statistics from 2016, this is one of the lowest we've hit.
Yes.
And with further decline in the strength of the currency, remember we are net importer. That means we use most of our shillings to import.
Yes.
And that means we buy more dollars.
Exactly.
And if we are buying more dollars with, I mean less dollars with more shillings, we're going to have a high cost of imports. Yes. And at the end of the day, that is going to translate into high cost of living.
The dollar is even going to get to 4,000 now.
Wow.
And this will be dangerous for our country. Secondly, the projects that have been stopped, that are going not to be funded, is a loss of employment to many Ugandans who have been engaged through suppliers, through laborers, through contractors.
Yeah.
We are going to have a loss of jobs.
The president mentioned earlier that we have fuel and we are going to have this pipeline and fuel is going to increase revenue. Would you side with the president on this one? Because also the pipeline has faced a lot of criticism by the same people, the Westerners, saying that this is going to be another boom of climate change and so on.
Yeah, the fuel issue, the oily issue is an escapist route for sure, because you do not mismanage with the little you have in anticipation of what you don't have. Even in Parliament here, they tell us don't debate in anticipation, discuss what is available. The oil money, when it comes, it should be helping us to move where we are. It should not help us to cover the gaps where we are from. Secondly, the oil money was expected to have even started by now, during the discovery of the oil. And there has been postponement. We are now told in June 2025, the first liters of oil should be coming from the ground. And what we should also know that the anticipated revenue from our oil fields is going to be affected by the fast growth in technology, because people have now gone into green energy.
Yeah.
We are having solar vehicles and so forth. So by electric cars,
vehicles. Even Kira, our very own, is making electric
is a substitution of the oil.
Yeah.
So even the period of earning, revenue earnings for 25 years, we might not even realize it. Technology may come and disrupt us. So we cannot plan on that. If it comes, it should be an added advantage. And there are already a lot of costs. Actually, when you look at the costs in oil exploration, that we regard as a loan, because it is supposed to be recovered once the oil farm companies have started generating revenue. They have to let it off. And the Auditor General has not even given us the audited costs that are part of the exploration agreements, which is part of the money spent. So when you're talking about money spent for the loans for this country, you need to add on exploration costs, which you must net off the revenue once we start adding. So it's not something that will just come and change this country when ourselves we have not changed our way of doing things, our way of planning, our way of budgeting, our way of budget execution. There's still a lot of luxury, there's a lot of expenditure that is avoidable. That should be avoidable. If the need to avoid them was not as serious yesterday, today it is more serious. And we should now be looking into that direction.
Mr. Honorable, when you look at the government's borrowing recently, there has been also criticism over government now borrowing on non-concessional terms. The non-concessional loans from China, for example, they don't have conditions like those of World Bank or IMF. But of course, they come at a cost, high interest rates,
yes,
and very short timelines. When you look at the timelines for Exim Bank in China, they are very short, but they will provide you with a loan as much as you want. And government is looking at those. What would be your advice in this line?
Yeah, of course, is a come, is a go. And that's why we need to clean our house such that we can be beneficiaries of the concessional loans. Otherwise, once the concessional loans dwindle and the unconcessional loans increase, it's a lonely, I don't know how to call it, there's a trap. It's a lonely trap, because we are talking about, of the 52 trillion shillings, almost 19 trillion is going into debt services and the treasury operations, that paying back the loan principal and the interest is almost 20 trillion. And if we do not curtail new loans, especially the unconcessional loans, that means our cost of managing loans is going to go beyond 20 trillion. Now, if debt payment goes beyond 20 trillion, budget support has reduced. That means we shall now be decreasing our discretionary funds, which I've talked about at 25 trillion. So, because the next financial year, we don't expect a lot of miracles. Because we have been having an incremental kind of budgeting for this country. And I remember challenging the Minister of Finance. Why is it written that a ministry which had 3 trillion in the budget for last financial year, it must now come to 3.3? Why not 2.7? Because of the incremental. Once we start with zero-based budgeting, we start from zero. Because now we have put in a lot of expenditure, a lot of unwanted issues in the budget. But because we are dealing with incremental, so for the first time, come 2024-25 budget, we should now go into another approach of zero-based budgeting. Start from zero to where you want to go.
Exactly.
But if you go from incremental, you start from what you have
upwards. Yeah.
From zero, start from scratch to realize what do you need. You may realize that even now you will not even reach where you are, because you are starting from zero. So that's what we need for this country come 2024, 2025. And fortunately, I happen to be a member of the Presidential Advisory Committee on the budget, where we align priorities based on the NDP 3 and also the commitments of the NRM through the NRM manifesto, what we committed to achieve, and vis-a-vis the priorities in the NDP 3. So, and I am part of now the background to the budget, such that we look through the priorities before they become working documents of government, and that's where we are going to have a very serious engagement and discussion.
Thank you, Honorable Dennis. Now, as we conclude, Honorable Dennis, also the domestic debt has been choking on government over about an increase from 2021 from 27.7 trillion now to 33 trillion in 2022. For example, when you look at institutions like NSSF that have been investing heavily in the domestic, domestic borrowing for government, they are saying that interest rates could be going lower as well this year because of what is happening now. What would you say to a Ugandan? How can they prepare themselves for what is coming? Yes, we have said there's no need for panic, but things are about to change. What would be your last word to the citizen of Uganda in order to prepare themselves for what is ahead?
Yeah, it is true. I have always told Ugandans, and I would want to tell them today, that every day you wake up, life is harder than yesterday. And unfortunately, for the time I've been around, I've not seen life getting better. it becomes worse. That's why people have very good memories of life yesterday. They will only tell you how things were.
How they enjoyed life.
From there, every day when you wake up and a loaf of bread is 5,000 and you go to the supermarket and they tell you it's 5,200, it will never go back to 4,000.
That's right.
Now it is you to tighten the belt. To see now, do you still need this bread, or you can bake some chapatis for breakfast at home? So, as a country, we had started well. When you look at the last budget of 2022-23, vis-a-vis this budget 2023-24, we had a significant reduction in the domestic borrowing of over 5 trillion shillings. And this was deliberate to promote the private sector.
Yeah.
Because overborrowing by government was overcrowding and crowding out the private sector, and the banks were preferring to lend to government as opposed to the private sector, and this was really suffocating the private sector. So government in this financial year deliberately reduced domestic borrowing by over 5 trillion, and this was a very welcome move. We don't know their thinking direction amidst the pronouncement of the World Bank, but still I want to urge the government that they should not start looking at domestic market as one of their sources of revenue. They should instead look at the expenditure aspect. What can they do without? What can they delete from the expenditure? Because already there is already
the income, yes, is already constrained.
We are already constrained. Even in Parliament, yesterday, I saw members of Parliament panicking and asking the Speaker what is going to happen. When are we revisiting the budget? We cannot. There is even no need to revisit this current budget, because the funding, as he projected, is going to come. But we should now use this budget to see how do we become more disciplined. How do we reach next budget when we have already faced the challenges? So for Ugandans who are watching us, I want to tell you that we need to get more frugal, but also we need to put to us, task us, because we are the leaders. We should not blame. I should not come here as a member of Parliament and start lamenting and blaming government as if I'm not part of government. Pile pressure on us to provide a solution. When you pile pressure on us as your leaders, we also push this pressure somewhere, because there's someone who is mandated to administer and manage this. So that's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Honorable Dennis. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is Honorable Nyangwesho Dennis, the MP of Samia Bugwe Central. My name is Anthony. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. I'll catch you next time. Have a good night. Bye for now.